Now, Pavarotti was a good friend.
Hello, welcome to The Revealing. I'm your host, Pavarotti. Here to discuss the Idaho4 case. As a disclaimer, this channel is for entertainment purposes. These are my opinions. I'm not here to slander. So let's get on with it. Okay, folks, in today's episode, I'm going to discuss a little bit more about that Aryan Knights situation that we have with Ann Taylor now defending one of them. And, you know, when I broke this story last night, it was very eye-opening. I mean, I was very familiar with this case with Meade and Uppenhauer because of the research that I've already completed with background into the idaho4 case and the theory that I have in this case. So it wasn't, it wasn't so shocking. It was very shocking that they assigned Ann Taylor to the case, but I already have so much information in the background about that case. It's kind of crazy. That's why when it happened, I was like, man, this is crazy. You know, I've already explored all the court docs on Uppenhauer and Meade and their cases because of I was looking for the connection. And what I want to do in this one is, first of all, I want to do a couple of things because I know a lot of people out there kind of batted an eyebrow when I started using excerpts out of Howard Bloom's book as receipts in my investigation, in my presentation. And there is a big reason for that. Obviously, I criticized Howard Bloom's book considerably because I didn't read the whole thing. But when I actually got to the end of it and I started reading what was in his book, it was very shocking to me to read that because it was literally exactly what I have been saying. And what I want to do just to show you that, because it does pertain to what I'm about to discuss with the Aryan Knights, is the videos that I was putting out months ago. And I'm going to show you an excerpt from one of the last ones that I did. But these videos were put out long before Howard Bloom's book was ever released to the public. So when you look in the context of these parts of these videos, just remember Howard Bloom's book, it hadn't come out yet. And when you see how it followed along with exactly what I was saying, it's almost as if Howard Bloom watched my videos and then put that in the end of his book. I know he didn't because it takes too long to get those things published. So I have to come to the understanding that, he was investigating exactly the way that I was. Now, the whole first part of his book, nah. But the end of his book, pretty dang accurate, I got to say. But the end of his book totally contradicts the rest of his book. So it's kind of a pick this or pick that, and I picked this. But check this out, what I'm talking about. Then we're going to get into a little bit more detail about those Aryan Knights. The hub starts right here in the Seattle-Tacoma area of Washington. They're then trafficked down the I-90 corridor all the way across to the city of Spokane, Washington, where another group of the Aryan family, known as the Aryan Knights of Idaho, take over the operations. They then use human mules from the city of Coeur d'Alene to drive the drugs down Highway 95 and into Moscow, Idaho, to their distributor. They then distribute the drugs to the local dealers, and then the dealers peddle the drugs to the youth at the colleges in Moscow and Pullman. Here's an excerpt from Howard Bloom's book, and it says, The defense investigators' first stop was the Seattle DEA field office, and the overview they offered was by all accounts a tale of cutthroat international intrigue. It was the story of a pipeline that ran from China, where the fentanyl precursor chemicals were produced, to the sinister Sinaloa and Jalisco cartels in Mexico, which manufactured the DRUGS and then smuggled the too often lethal product to their distribution networks in northwestern urban hubs such as Seattle and Spokane. Next, with the eager help of a freelance army of small-time distributors, the DRUGS reached into the seemingly wholesome all-American counties and college towns like Moscow, Idaho. In an effort to combat the narcotics trafficking, a drug task force was beginning to make arrests that would later take down the Aryan family. That was the view from 1,000 feet, but Sheriff Brett Myers, head of the Quad Cities D Task Force, multi-jurisdictional team popped up in part by federal money, whose territory included the university towns of Moscow and Pullman, along with Lewis Clark State College in Lewiston, Idaho. They offered a ground-level account, and it was enough to give anyone whose child was heading off to college in the area the willies. The sheriff shared that his task force was working with college kids in the local schools whom they caught dealing MDMA and C, flipping them and using the students to go after the local dealers. And once the scared witless college kids had helped his team ID the foot soldiers, we go up the ladder to get the people tied to the cartels in the cities. The sheriff took a philosophical perspective on the possible danger the frat boy double agents might be heading into. It could be, he acknowledged equably, there are some very tough guys running this business. The risks, however, were no deterrents. We're game to do that every day of the week, he promised. Was some sort of similar intrigue going on in Moscow the night of the 4 students were unalived? The sheriff was not involved in the investigation and therefore can only speculate, but his was a local lawman's informed conjecture and a resonating one. Could it have been a D-related case? I can't rule it out. It's not probable. From what I know, that answers a lot of questions. Was that not just uncannily accurate from what I've been saying to what he actually put in that book? I mean, it's just very interesting. But now we got to get into the Aryan Knights a little bit, because as you can see in my presentations, I have been connecting the Knights with that Aryan family. And the reason I do that is because I have some knowledge in how those types of organizations operate. And what they do is they're very territorial, number one. Even though they're not part of the same gang, just because they're Aryan doesn't mean that it's all one big, giant, happy family, as they call it. Different areas have completely different gangs. However, just like most large enterprises, those gangs will cooperate. And they prefer to cooperate with others like themselves in different areas because they feel like the trust factor is a little better there. And they can communicate between the shot callers in the prisons, and it just goes deep. So that's why when the narcotics come from Seattle and Tacoma over into the Spokane area and then starts to get distributed into Idaho, see, you either have to have permission from the organization that's in control of that area in Idaho, or you have to have cooperation. More than likely, it would be cooperation because of the potential of the proceeds coming from the trafficking, because it's a lot easier to bring things over from Seattle and Tacoma to Spokane than it is to get it up to Spokane from Mexico. Is a lot of things you'll read says. So when the Knights, and I'm not saying it's the actual physical Knights that are involved directly in the organization, but they're the overseers. I mean, they're the ones that are in in the end, they're in charge, they're in control. So let's take a look at just a couple of clips that will give us some information about these Aryan Knights.
Dangerous Idaho inmate and his armed accomplice, who police say carried out a violent ambush, escape, and urgent manhunt. Aryan Knight gang members Skylar Mead and Nicholas Umpenhauer were captured yesterday afternoon about 130 miles from the dramatic prison break that left 3 corrections officers with gunshot wounds at a Boise hospital. After the planned ambush and escape, 2 people were killed. Right now, investigators are looking into how those deaths could be connected. One of the gang members is expected in court just hours from now. We're also learning more about the gang they are connected to. Alex Kelly.
They estimate that the membership is about 100 people, which by standards, if you look at the largest prison, white supremacist prison gang, which would be the Aryan Brotherhood, it kind of dwarfs it. That the Aryan Brotherhood, is very, very large throughout the entire United States prison system. But very often, a smaller gang like this, a smaller organization, would align with other groups as well to continue their ideology as well as protection for each other as well. So, but a couple of years ago, the hierarchy of the gang was imprisoned for under the RICO statute, the racketeering and influence statute, and so they lost a big part of their organization just a couple of years ago. And they're back. I know this is shocking. They're back in prison, where I'm sure they're doing exactly what they do anyway.
Now, before you say, yeah, but that's down in Boise, we're talking about up there near Moscow, near Kootenai County. Well, let's listen to where these Aryan Knights that were taken down about 4 or 5 years ago, let's hear about where all of them reside. Listen closely when they talk about, what jails they're in.
So confident. These gang street operations are substantially weakened. Some specifics. There are 8 separate indictments on the federal side, 13 defendants. 11 of the 13 are charged with methamphetamine-related offenses, including conspiracy to distribute and distribution of meth. 8 of the defendants face charges of conspiracy to distribute methamphetamine. Tyler James Campbell, Jesse Everett Ford, Brian Cade Humphreys, Jeremy Kane Lyons, Jason Sheppers, Kirsten Decker, Frank Lee Grell, Angela Marie Sheldon. 2 of the defendants faced gun charges. These 2 defendants have prior felony convictions and are alleged to have unlawfully possessed firearms. Cameron James Ball, Keith Anthony Murphy. The 3 remaining defendants are charged with the distribution of methamphetamine. John Allen Redfern, Jennifer Lee Sayer, and Kimberly Ann Hale. Campbell, Ford, Sayer, Hale, Grell, and Ball are currently in custody at the Ada County Jail. Lyons is currently in custody at the Kootenai County Jail. Decker and Murphy are currently at the Idaho Department of Correction. 3 of the remaining 4 defendants were arrested last night and this morning. Mr. Redfern remains at large.
So as you can see, the fact that Ann Taylor is now defending one of these guys, things could get really, really interesting going forward. But please like and subscribe to the channel. Post your comments, thoughts, criticisms. Till next time, Pavarotti's out.